thank you again, Seth, for joining us and agreeing to share your success at Toledo Public Schools. I did want to, just kind of get the conversation going. And Seth, can you describe and walk us through what the process was like, you know, managing and distributing those special fund items prior to implementing Teacher Wallet?
Yeah, all these funds that we were using, in specifically, I'll kind of jump ahead, but we're using the platform for special funds like behavior modification, and we get the stipend for student teacher honorarium when a teacher has a student teacher. And in the past, we would give that money right as a special payroll check to the individual teachers. And we kind of thought, well, there's really no oversight of how that money is spent. So this provided us with a whole different way to do that. And when you think about it, when you're doing something through a payroll check, that teacher's getting taxed on that. I may not be taxed on a lot of money there, but still, I don't know about you, but I don't want to give the IRS any more dollars. So this looked like a perfect fit for something like that.
Got it. And when you think about the process beforehand, how much time was involved from an administration standpoint, and how many people were involved in the process?
I think you're talking about it touching potentially 7 different people, from the teacher to the purchase order originator, right through the approval process, through the workflow process. And sometimes with the workflow process, a purchase order can sit on somebody's workflow 2 or 3 days before it gets moved along. So from a time standpoint, this has really knocked it down to a teacher can go in, order, and the order's on its way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about some of those challenges, and not really cutting a check, but then putting that back in their payroll, what were some of the other challenges that you guys experienced with the old way of how those funds were being managed and distributed?
Right. When so if they're getting it through a paycheck, one of the big things is we don't know how it's being spent. Behavior modification dollars, for instance, are to be spent on the students for incentives, classroom supplies, awards, and so on. But do we know that's happening? No. Mm-hmm. And if you look at some grant funds, those are a totally different story. They didn't go through any payroll checks or anything, but you had the PO.
Oh,
oops, sorry, I accidentally bumped the space bar, which was, again, I talk with my hands. So, and so you had the purchase order process for some of the other funds we're using, and again, it's cumbersome sometimes, and especially when you're maybe I just need a $25 set of workbooks or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. So now I want to get into a little bit more of the data that you were able to glean from the system. So just to give everybody some backdrop on what Seth came up with. When I first approached him about sharing his story, he actually went on a mission to start looking at the data points and to uncover what has been the return on their investment related to the platform. So he's going to be sharing facts and figures that he, through his analysis of the platform, came up with. But now I do want to kind of talk about, what is that process like now, and we'll get into your details Sound good?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, great.
Okay, so what we do now with Class Wallet and with um, the various special funds that we're using it for at this time is to get a list of people who are going to get the funds, and we do maybe one purchase. We'll just use behavior modification as example. One purchase order for the behavior modification with a list of the teachers that are going to get that money, and they can go in and they can spend as they need, and so they could maybe do 20 different transactions till they spend down their money. But as opposed to being 20 different POs, that was one PO to a bunch of different teachers. So you really knocked off a lot of the need for purchase orders.
Mhm.
So as you see here in this transactional breakdown, and this was funds that we have had in since the inception to, I believe I did this on February 23rd. So the amount of money that has been spent through Class Wallet through these transactions, as you see, there's $230,000. And the average approved transaction amount was $86. So when you break that down, that's a lot of transactions that you'd have been doing $86 purchase orders for. The other thing I was curious about was online store versus reimbursements, because that's two different options inside the platform. We had a total of 1,346 approved transactions just for the online store. So 53% of our transactions were online store, and the remainder were the reimbursements. So the online store spend, as you see, there's $182,000.
And that just kind of showcases that teachers don't like to come out of pocket. They like the convenience of being able to shop online without having to then go seek reimbursement, right?
Yeah, right. But if they have to do reimbursement, they want a simpler process to do that.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, great. Great. So the next slide that we have is really more related to one of the things that Seth just alluded to. He mentioned that his district is averaging $86.76 per transaction. And one of the things I just wanted to showcase and share with the group here is this is a year-over-year comparison of the average transaction value that's being tracked on our platform today. We did this analysis because we were curious to see what impact COVID-19 had to the average transaction value. And we came to find out that, that there was only a $4 difference. So when you look at 2020 compared to 2021, it was $106.71 compared to $102.82. But more interestingly enough, when you look at the 2020 average spend, you can see trends where it really just doesn't make sense where anybody is on the chasm, because we see districts with less than 7,500 students spending over $100 per transaction. And when you look at districts from 7,500 students to 20,000 students, on average, you're spending $75 per transaction. And then it goes back up again. So there's not really a set amount per se, but we are seeing that the average spend is around $102, where Seth is at 86. So Seth, I'll let you continue on with your transaction. I just wanted to showcase, that these are some of the this is some of the data points that we are tracking within the platform to help drive efficiency and showcase how are these dollars being spent and what type of expenditure and transaction value they are.
Yeah, so going into this slide here, we were talking about the online store just a couple minutes ago, And this is the breakdown on reimbursements. So of the total amount of transactions that we had over 1,100 reimbursement transactions for 46% of those transactions. But you see that the reimbursement spend is $48,000, and I believe the prior slide said online was like 180. Um, so the percentage of the total spend on reimbursements is much lower. Still a very convenient thing for them to do this way, but definitely they do seem to like the point and click of an online store.
Yep. And much smaller in dollar value, these
Yes,
reimbursements as well,
correct.
which even makes the challenge even more cumbersome if you're managing it on paper.
Right. Well, and I noticed too when I'm approving reimbursements, one of the things that I noticed is um, teachers can be very frugal. They a lot of times these receipts I see are Family Dollar and Dollar Tree, and so it's a lot of dollar items or $2 items that that they're buying and submitting for reimbursement, and it's beneficial to the class. And I don't even think that Family Dollar or Dollar Tree takes a purchase order.
Right. Yep.
So
Big couponers too, right?
yes, right, yes.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome.
So, and this is just kind of a graphic on the slides we just talked about, the percentage of online versus reimbursement transactions, and then the dollar value of the two. You see that the online is much larger in dollar value, even though the transactional percentages are kind of close.
Got it.
So, and I gotta move my little picture screen here. So this slide is kind of just breaking that down a little further, that the average processing time of PO creation, invoice entry, and payment is a half an hour. That's actual work, typing that purchase order in our ERP system, having accounts payable enter the invoice, and then the process we go through to actually cut a check. And that's a per transaction. Obviously, you don't cut a check, just one check at a time, but I guess, probably prior to me coming here 28 years ago, we might have. But I'm glad I missed those days. But that leads into, with 2,654 transactions, 1,327 hours. That's a lot of person hours that has been saved. So, and we estimated the cost of processing transactions via the PO process to be 45 grand. So you're taking into account all the cost of personnel to do those transactions. Now, that would have been 2,654 purchase orders that we wound up doing, with a total of 53 over the span of 2.5 years we've been working with ClassWallet. So that brought the cost of transactions down to about $1,799, $1,800. So quite a difference there.
Significant savings.
Yeah. So if you see at the bottom line, there's a savings of $43,000, and that's just transactional costs.
And when you get into just even talking about the transactional cost itself, what is how does your team feel about the process? I mean, what has it done for them and their livelihood and their experience?
Well, my team, they look at it this way, that they've got plenty of invoices still to process, and many of those invoices with different vendors, they require a little more time and attention. So if they're not having to enter some, $25 invoice for, 10 boxes of crayons, what have you, it's more time they can focus on solving those bigger issues in order for us to continue to pay other vendors on time.
Got it. So they feel like that they are spending their time towards the bigger items that are going to drive further efficiency for the organization rather than spending their time on what we hear a lot of clients say, the death of 1,000 cuts, that it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it's non-significant.
Right. Yeah.
So
And I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I did have the initial, a lot of times you'll get this, oh, this is taken away from jobs. No, it's just making your jobs more efficient. And now, the death by 1,000 cuts is exactly a good example there, that they're not getting sliced that many times.